Hello and welcome to the Geek Embassy Watches Star Trek Discovery. I'm your host, Regina McMenemy, and I'm here with Dante and Isabella today. Say hi.
Hello.
And we are live, so this is a live episode, which is really fun and really cool. So if you're watching, I have the chat open on the YouTube page. You can get the link on both the Geek Embassy Twitter and on my at Doc Liz Twitter right now. And we'd love to incorporate your comments and thoughts as we chat about episodes 5 and 6 of CBS All Access Star Trek Discovery, or Star Trek Disco, I guess is the short abbreviated name for it.
Yeah.
T-shirts.
I literally laughed at watching their T-shirts and saying, like, why does it say disco? Oh God! And then I realized what it meant, and then I just did one of these. Because I thought, like, that's something that that a Rabbit fan is going to go ahead and do.
Right.
As like a Tumblr joke or a Pinterest joke or something. It's not something that I expected to actually see on the
show,
on the
like
TV
the
show.
Product placement, like so clearly, like, oh, I'm sure there's a link somewhere in CBS land to actually go get a black T-shirt that says disco and probably says Star Trek Discovery on the back of it. I don't know. But I kind of bristled a little bit at that because there was a really big push in the third season of the original series to start doing a lot of product placement that Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner pushed back pretty hard on.
Mm-hmm.
Not realizing at that time that all they had to do to, get like marketing going was like sell tricorders.
Oh, really?
All they would have had to do was make that. They actually started trying to put things in the episodes where they had these like special emblems that were going to be pins that they were going to sell and stuff. And of course, all they really had to do to, make a profit on the secondary market stuff would have been to make kids tricorders and stuff, which they eventually did. But
yeah,
at that point, they were trying to create it when they already had plenty of material to work from. I just always thought that was funny.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, go ahead and make a plastic phaser, sell it for $5. Kids will literally drag their parents to Toys R Us.
Yes, order to buy this for me, please. All right, so episodes 5 and 6. 5 was Choose Your Pain, and 6 is Lethe, Lethe, Lethe. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. Anybody know?
I guess.
I guess.
I mean,
yeah.
I didn't hear them say the word Lethe in the
at all
in the actual episode.
In fact, until I sat down at this moment right before we started recording and pulled up the episode, I didn't even know that was the title, or didn't remember that was the title. So, but it, kind of an improvement from the longest title ever of the jerk's knife cares not for the lamb's cry, or whatever it was. Drama.
Yeah.
Title.
Mm-hmm.
So
I rolled my eyes so hard at that one.
I'm still rolling my eyes at that one.
Yep.
So we're going to start with episode 5, Choose Your Pain. And so this is, the episode opens with Lorca meeting with the ambassadors and pretty much his bosses, and they're yelling at him for being bad.
Being bad at his job, yeah.
and doing things he shouldn't be doing, sort of taking and doing the kind of rogue captain activities of, I'm going to go do my own thing regardless of what my orders are, which I'm sure is going to be a theme we're going to continue to see.
Absolutely. So, Regina, you've watched a lot more of the original series than I have. I'm given to understand that was kind of Captain Kirk's entire MO. Is that correct?
He definitely pushed the boundaries of kind of that chaotic good approach of, I'm going to make the right choice for this situation regardless of what the rules say. But he never really completely disregarded orders he had been given, the way that Lorca is doing, where Lorca has that, someone gave him a direct order and said, you need to protect, you're our greatest asset and you need to protect this. And he just said no. Like, Captain Kirk was never quite that obvious about it.
Okay.
Or overt, I should say. Like his decisions. I mean, he did definitely do that. There were, quite a few instances where he kind of went rogue or whatnot.
Yeah.
Which I think, if you're more familiar with the Next Generation, Picard was definitely in response to that in terms of being the rule follower, of being,
yeah,
within the lines kind of captain, in response to Kirk being quite so cowboy. Like, that's always the comparison.
Okay. So yeah, so it's safe to say then that Lorga is really unlike any other Starfleet captain we've ever encountered.
I would be comfortable saying that, yes.
Okay.
I think it's a reflection. We talked about this in the panel when we talked about like villains becoming like muddy, or in this it's more our heroes are so muddy that I think he's becoming the villain to a degree, which is not too terribly surprising, especially with the way episode 6 ended. But let's not quite jump quite that far ahead in our discussion and stick with episode 5. I can't wait to talk about him in episode 6 because he was just so I don't even know how to describe him. Troubling for me, I guess. Anyway.
Yeah. There was one part in this episode which was troubling for me, but that's an entirely different thing.
Right. Okay. So episode 5. So we see him in a panel of all the bosses telling him, rein it in, troublemaker. And then from after he leaves that meeting, his shuttle is compromised, and the Klingons capture him and 2 not wearing red shirts.
Yeah. That is the thing that has annoyed the tar out of me this entire time. It's like the people who were dying are clearly red shirts, but they are not wearing red, and it makes me sad.
I mean, they created that whole thing, became the red shirt, so
it's just like, and it happened in episode 6 as well. We'll get to that part in episode 6, but like 2 red shirts were killed, like indiscriminately. But,
it's definitely, and it became clear as soon as it was attacked, as soon as he was in the shuttle and we were seeing it. I'm like, okay, what's things about to happen? And we don't know the names of these guys that he's with, so as soon as we saw like the torture begin so he's captured by the Klingons throw him in jail, and the whole thing apparently of the torture for the Klingon, the way the Klingons are torturing the humans, they have to pick one person. They all have to vote for one person. They have to vote somebody off the island, essentially.
Yeah.
To get the beating of the day.
Yeah, it is like I was just literally right now making notes on what I remembered about episode 5, and I absolutely loved that part. Like it is disturbing and triggering as heck to watch. But it is so be advised, dear watchers. Like it is triggering, but it is precisely what I've wanted to see from the Klingons this entire time.
Yeah,
this is like the diabolical, the chaotic, evil Klingons that I wanted to see. The people who are going to go ahead and screw up your morale and make you turn on each other. Like these are those Klingons, and like why can't I have those all the time?
Yeah, I thought that too. In terms of, we had seen so much of this kind of evangelistic Klingons going for let's bring the clans together, which is not like a bad thing necessarily, but it doesn't really sit with what we've known of them as characters. So it definitely was more in line with how I've always thought of the Klingons, especially at this point in the timeline where they haven't made any kind of peace, not only with themselves, but haven't made any peace with the Federation as well. What did you think, Isabella? You've been awfully quiet so far.
Yeah, I liked what they did with the Klingons. I still don't like them.
The Klingons?
I'm still bored by them. Yeah. I think you guys enjoyed that part of it more than I did.
Yeah.
Because it was just like Lorca's man pain, like for a while.
Well, I was pleased that the captain of the ship that got them was a female. So at least because you don't see a lot of women in leadership roles in the Klingon,
Right.
with the Klingons very often. So that was a nice kind of nod to some level of diversity. Although I don't know if it really follows with their lore.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it does, but hey.
But
yeah, I mean, like, I'm not complaining.
Yeah, I have to. I really, to be blatantly honest, I did not realize the level of purist I am about Star Trek until I started watching this show.
I mean, I'm glad you said something first because I noticed it.
For me, that. Yeah, I just.
Oh yeah, for these last 2 episodes.
Yeah.
The amount of times that you've said I'm not really a purist, but
I know, I'm coming to grips with it. I'm coming to understand. And part of it is because I've talked about this in many places, but every geekdom has a specific place in your life. And for me, Star Trek resides with my dad. My dad was a huge Star Trek fan. He loves Star Trek. He watched all the original series, and I watched the first season of The Next Generation with him. Yeah. And so it has a lot of resonance for me, I think a lot deeper than I really realized.
Sure.
Because usually I think I come down between the Star Wars and Star Trek. You can't be a fan of both. I'm usually on the Star Wars side, but now I'm thinking I'm really on the Star Trek.
Yeah. When you're arguing about tribbles,
yeah.
I think you're firmly on the Star Trek side.
Yeah. So
tiny bit.
Yeah, and I know the original series pretty well, and so episode 5 has a great one of the best characters from the original series, Hardcore Fenton Mudd, in it. And unless you know the story of his kind of background on the original series, you might not get all of the jokes that are sort of being portrayed in his section of it. But I just loved him, and I love the actor who's playing him. I can't remember his name off the top of my head here.
Rainn Wilson.
Yeah, Rainn Wilson. He's awesome. He did a great job.
He really did. I mean, I admit to having watched maybe 5 or 6 episodes of the original series, so I didn't know who this guy was or why he's important. I figured oh, cool, he's kind of fun. But yeah, he did a great job. I really enjoyed what he brought to that what he brought to those scenes with the prisoners. He really was the wild card in there, and he goodness, I hate to make a microeconomics pun, but he kind of made the prisoner's dilemma a thing.
He did, and it's really interesting to know because what happened on the original series will happen in the future, to where he is now. And so one of the things that was so hilarious is there's 2 episodes in the original series that Mudd is in. I can't remember. One of them is Mudd's Women, which I think is the first one that they find him in, and the next one I can't remember the title of off the top of my head. But in the first, he's essentially trafficking he's selling women to minors who are super attractive to be their wives. And it turns out the reason why they're super attractive is because they're taking some sort of drug that changes them to look like goddesses or change them. And essentially it's bad, 1960s sci-fi, so it's with bad makeup and good makeup, bad hair and good hair is really the only difference between the magic drug that they take. But that's his first one, and so Kirk busts him, and I can't remember exactly how they end up punishing him, but in the second episode, Mudd has found himself on a planet where some very intelligent beings had created a bunch of robots that were completely lost because the beings that they had been created to care for all died. Mudd lands here as the only human among them of, this entire world of robots, and he has given them purpose because they have someone to take care of now. And he has them create, like, I don't know, X number of models of one, you know, beautiful woman. But the funny part, or kind of tragic thing, is, you know, he mentions his wife Stella, right?
Sure.
I have to get back to Stella. This is like really important to him in this. Well, in that episode, Stella, the reference to Stella was he had the robots make a version of Stella. And
that's not creepy at all.
Not at all, right? But it gets better because he had them make a version of her, but not so he could be like married to her or with her. So he could put her off on the side in a little cave, and all she did was like raise her finger and complain to him, "Hardcore Fenton Mud, you get back here right now and you do the dishes," or whatever it is, right?
That's really funny.
And he can say to her, you know, "Be quiet," or "Shut up, Stella," and she will shut down and go back into her cave, and like the lights go out. Like, so the only reason he had Stella created was so he could silence her. Some horrible.
That is messed up.
So when you know that, and you're watching him say with like all this like heart and emotion, "I have to get back to Stella."
Yeah.
I mean, it's just hilarious. Anyway, so Mud is in the prison cell where Lorca gets thrown, which is how we come, the prisoner's dilemma, and they're all trying to choose who gets tortured.
Yep.
And there's another crewman from another who's been captive for, you know, what was it?
7 months.
7 months at this point.
Yep.
From that, who had been captured and had been a favorite of the female captain.
All right, so was I the only one who was creeped out when they said a favorite of the female captain?
Yes.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
No, I mean, you weren't the only one. Sorry. Yeah,
is
sounds
that
creepy too.
Like, I don't want to go ahead and make it sound like, you know, like I have a brain in the gutter or something, but like, is that what I think it is?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was.
They're implying what I think they're implying, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because she says it to him when they escape at the end. She says, you know, "You're going to come back to me. You know, you're going to miss what we had," or something to that effect.
Which is why I think when they made that's the only reason they really made her
female
captain, so that they could add that level of
depravity,
awfulness to it.
That is so weird.
Which is why I wasn't really a fan of that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, the insinuation of him being a favorite is that she's had more than one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
exactly.
because they probably died.
Right. Yeah.
She's probably executed them for rejecting her advances or whatever.
Or because she's tortured them to death.
Yeah.
Or because she's tortured them to death.
Yeah. It's hard to say. We don't get enough of that backstory, but truly this was enough of that backstory.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It was disturbing in many other ways. However, there's an entire other half of this episode, or rather 2/3 of this episode. So in addition to Lorca being trapped on this prisoner bird of prey, we've also got the rescue efforts. To go ahead and save him, with Sanu being promoted to acting captain, and then we have the other subplot, which is kind of tied into the other one, with the moral dilemma that they have with the tardigrade. So, which one of those do we want to tackle first?
Let's do Sanu first.
Okay, so I've been a fan of Sanu for this entire series. I thought that he was just out the gate one of the most well-rounded characters, and I mean, it could just be that my eyes are clouded because I really enjoyed Doug Jones as an actor, but I thought that he was like he's always been on the top of his game, and watching Sanu clearly struggle with his captainship just made me get endeared to the character a lot more. yeah, like I'll get a little bit personal with this one. Like with one of my very first librarian jobs. Yes, hello universe. I'm a librarian in real life. I was thrown into supervision and leadership right away, and like after having basically zero experience with it in previous jobs and in previous life. All of the struggles that Sanu was going through were things that were things and feelings that were churned up inside of me when I was really trying to go ahead and present this brave face and trying to make all of these bold decisions based on what I perceived a leader would do.
Right.
And it led to some successes. It led to some, I'll go out and say like some catastrophic failures. Let's see, but it ultimately was a great learning experience for me, and I think that Sinu went through a very similar character arc throughout this entire episode. Like, granted, like it was just 40 minutes, but he realized like just how much he had to just how much he has to learn.
Yeah. I loved this arc. I thought it was well written. I thought it was well executed. I thought his acting is superb. I love the scene where he tries to apply like advanced logic to what makes a good captain.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He's asking the computer.
Like the outcome of that.
Yes. Go.
He's like, no, never mind. At the end where he's like, no, I don't actually need to like see, like it's not quantifiable really.
When he trusts his own instincts and his own understanding of the world and the universe, he succeeds. And I just thought that was a fantastic, he sees it differently. He's like, wait, what are they doing? Why is this formation different? What is happening with this? This is not normal. And it was that level of acute observation that ends up being the reason why he succeeds so well. And I thought that was just fantastic. I mean, what a takeaway message for any, truly subplot. Like this was, one small piece of a very large and complex episode. So
absolutely.
And involved torture.
Yeah. Torture. I mean, I think the one thing that I struggled with regard to that subplot was that I don't think, goodness. I mean, he took accountability with the computer when the computer asked him, do you want an assessment? But he still went to Michael and said to her, if it wasn't for you, I would have been more prepared for this scenario.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's probably like the one character failing that he made, that he's still
bitter.
He's so bitter about probably about her mutiny and about the advancement opportunities that he
and also it wasn't even just her mutiny. It was her inability to leave Giorgio's side. Because I think it's kind of insinuated in the pilot episodes that she had wanted her to take her own command sooner, before.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And she didn't want to do that. So her reluctance, she's kind of playing that, Riker was like that too, where they'd come to Riker multiple times to offer him his own command, and he kept turning it down because he wanted to stay with Picard and with the Enterprise. And I think she was kind of following in that same thing. So he's like, had you gone off as you were supposed to, not only would I have had more experience as first officer, but you wouldn't have been here and you wouldn't have started this awful war.
Oh yeah, right. I mean, I think this entire exchange really only goes to further the point that Sanu is probably the best character on this show.
I love him. I love Tilly too, though. I really have
Tilly's great
in my heart for Tilly.
Yeah, she started to warm my heart in episode 6.
Yeah,
we'll get to episode 6.
We'll get there. We're almost there. But yes, I really like her and I really like him, and I actually appreciate. I don't think it was definitely the mature choice for him to go back to her at that with those feelings. but I think it's a real choice.
Oh, absolutely. It is a real choice.
Yeah, that acting out and that like harboring those kinds of bad feelings, I think are things that would happen in real life. And so I really kind of appreciated, in terms of, again, we'll go back to my Star Trek purist tendencies. One of the things that's kind of hard to deal with in the next generation is exactly how controlled everybody is about their feelings and about their thoughts. And there's kind of this overly cautious, careful thing. And I was worried that they were taking a lot of that aesthetic onto this show. And this shows that that's not as true. And so does Lorca's kind of craziness as well. Like his, we're in war and I'm going to do whatever I can to succeed and to keep people safe because we're in war. Also belies, less sort of emotional, a less emotional evolved state. And I think that that's good as well.
Yep. Another thing that we'll return to in episode 6.
Yes, another thing that we will return to in episode 6 because man, is he a jerk.
So let's then. I think we've covered then the Sanu plot arc. So the final plot arc then for episode 5 would be the tardigrade plot arc.
Yes.
Where it's clearly
damaging,
being tortured and getting damaged in order to propel Discovery to be the #1 secret weapon that it is. So how do we feel like this was, pardon the pun, executed?
I think it was good. I liked the way it was told. It's hard. I'm trying to remember. So this is where the engineer, the scientist guy, Stamets actually puts himself in the chamber in this, right? Because they jumped to rescue. So they use the magical jumping mechanism to jump to rescue the captain. And then the tardigrade curls up into a little ball. Yeah,
curls up into a little ball and practically there was a term that they used for it, and I can't remember the term because it's like 17 syllables long, but it basically ejected something in the neighborhood of like 90% of the water that's in its body, and it went into some sort of deep hibernation state, which apparently, like I looked in Wikipedia, and apparently that's a thing that real tardigrades do.
Oh.
So it's like, look at that.
Tardigrades can like exist in like space. They're incredibly real thing. This is just like a giant one.
This is incredible, is what it is. And I kind of wish that it would that it could be around more often.
Well, I don't think we've seen the end of a tardigrade. I'm assuming that we'll come across them again. I was looking to see. I have a summary, an episode recap up of it, but I don't see them actually say what the what that word is for what ended up happening. But yeah, so it.
Yeah, so it goes ahead and it goes into its hibernating state. Goes into its hibernating state, which presents several problems. Is that one, they now can't get out of Klingon space fast enough, and then number 2 is that they're going to what do you do with an ostensibly dead tardigrade?
Right. Yes.
And this is where we see Stamets start to have more of a personality than stuck up science officer, where he starts to go ahead and give some of that initial pushback for Sanu.
Right.
And he tells him like listen, like no, like Michael is correct. Michael is correct. Like this thing is being hurt, it's being tortured, and it cannot sustain. It cannot the pressure that we are putting onto it, and it's going to go ahead and crack. And and then later, after the hibernation happens, when Sanu basically says like, well, you figure it out, wake it up, and explicitly against Sanu's orders, he goes ahead and he puts the magical spore juice or whatever into his body and basically becomes a surrogate tardigrade and uses himself to go ahead and power the leap outside of
which he doesn't tell anybody. He just says,
he just says, I'm gonna go get a cup of coffee.
Right. The bridge says, okay, the drive is online, and Saru says, let's go, and he hits the button without realizing what had happened.
Yeah.
And was Michael on the board at that point? on the board on
I think Michael had made her way to the bridge at that point.
Yeah.
But I forget. I mean, like it doesn't matter. Like, they all went down to the engineering lab and found out, like, oh, well, look at that. That's crazy.
He's laying on the ground, and then and then they recognize that he needs help, and they think he's dead. Luckily enough, he's not, or maybe not. Luckily enough, because the moment that creeped Dante out so badly for this episode that I thought was absolutely outstanding.
It was terrifying.
It also gave me the heebie-jeebies. No,
it's creepy.
Nope.
Makes me very sad. So for like good thing about that scene, hooray! There's a visibly interracial couple and there's a visibly gay couple.
Yes.
Like, they're both the same.
Beautiful. I was like, wow, look at this. This is like, you want to talk about the evolution of Star Trek? Yes. Good.
This is incredible. It's Stamets, and I forget what the doctor's name is, but the doctor's a black man. Stamets is a painfully white man, and they're sitting together and brushing their teeth and being all cutesy wootsy. And it was great. Doing all the little like married couple banter. Like it was nice and cute.
And there was one allusion to it where he goes to Michael about, the tardigrade and says, well, maybe he'll listen to you because he doesn't listen to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was like, are they doing what I think they're doing?
I know, I thought that too. I'm like, I wonder.
See, but that was fine, and I thought it was all going to be great. And here's the thing, like I knew that as soon as the doctor walked out the room, that something was going to happen. I figured that we were going to turn back to Stamets, and he would be like holding back like some vomit, or like his nose would start bleeding, or like maybe his eyes would go black or something like that. Yeah, I was thinking that something like that was going to happen. Like
he had an animal in him now, or some parasite.
Something like he was holding back that he's visibly ill because he doesn't want to upset his partner, or something to that effect. But no, they have to go with the damn creepy route and have him walk away and have his reflection look back and be like, hey, no. That is terrible. Never do that. It is awful, and I didn't sleep for 2 days. I didn't brush my teeth for 2 days. I walked into my bathroom, I did Listerine, and I spit it out in the kitchen sink so I wouldn't have to look at myself in the mirror. It was terrible. I hated it.
Well, I just have to go back to that's some good storytelling then, because if it creeps you out that much, then...
I mean, that's the truth.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I didn't find it that creepy. I thought it was a super interesting foreshadowing of, this is a good solution, I guess, but it may not stay that way.
Yeah.
This might not be as good as we think it's going to be. So
no, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's going to be cool. So that's the end of the episode. And that's after Michael releases the tardigrade into space. She gives it a shot of
the spores.
Spores, yeah. And then
it shoots it into space because it wants to be free, and then it magically just unhibernates and just oh, okay, cool. Peace, suckers.
Yeah. See you later. I'm gonna fly off now.
Yeah, and that's really cool. You know what? We glossed over a very important part of Lorca's character. Now that I think about it, that we get.
Oh yeah, I wanted to go back to that too.
At the end of the episode. So I think there's some very important points that we need to cover with the escape. Is that Sanu basically had nothing to do with the escape, which is why I think he didn't want to get his evaluation. He just happened to show up in the right place at the right time. At the right time, because Lorca and Ash Tyler did all of their escaping for themselves, which I thought Ash Tyler is fantastic. And
yes,
he had that line. He's like, yeah, I always knew it was going to be a 2-man job. I was just waiting for the right man.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead and suck it, mud. It was great. So they basically go ahead and they fight their way out of this entire Klingon.
And they leave Mud behind,
because he's a human sack of garbage.
Yes, because he's been colluding with them and giving them information and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's the
Klingons.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, he's bad.
So
follows Mud's character, by the way.
Yeah.
Purist note.
Of course.
Mud was always for Mud.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, totally follows the character.
So earlier in the episode, we see we're talking like first 2 minutes, we see Lorca going ahead and like giving himself some eye drops because he's got this extreme photosensitivity to light.
They're not eye drops.
Is it like eye injection?
It's a needle.
Okay, so he puts like a needle in his eye.
Which also is disturbing.
Oh my God, I couldn't watch it. I was like, he picked up the needle and I'm like, oh, I'm so out. Tell me when it's over. Yeah.
Yeah. So he and you don't know why, because and they have the doctor saying like, I could fix this, and he's like damn well why I don't want to fix this, and we're just sitting there like, well, I wonder what we're gonna find out at the end of the episode.
It's gotta come back up. Yeah.
Yeah. And then during the torture scenes, we find out that Lorca was the captain of another vessel, and that vessel ended up basically getting destroyed. He was the only survivor, and this is where he picked up his extreme photosensitivity. And
he sacrificed his entire crew, and then he blew up the ship so that they wouldn't be tortured by Klingons.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that was his greatest failing, his greatest regret, his greatest shame. And then when he and Ash get into a Klingon escape pod and they're racing out to go ahead and get to the Enterprise, not the Enterprise, the Discovery. Sorry, it's just. So Ash asks him about it. It's like that eye sensitivity thing, that was from your previous ship, wasn't it? And Lorca just responds with like, we all choose our own pain, which is what the Klingons have been asking them the entire episode.
Yeah,
I was like, that is a spectacular view into who Lorca is. Like,
yeah,
and it is consistent with everything that we've seen so far, that he is willing to go ahead and defy direct orders and do what he thinks is the correct thing, in order, like, even if it is an extraordinarily unpopular and controversial choice.
And and puts him and his crew in danger, and he's
yeah. But again, reckless. Even though he's reckless, it shows that he is not without remorse. Like, he could easily go ahead and have this fixed, but he keeps this injury around as a way to remind himself that that the choices he makes affect other people.
Yeah,
and that there are hundreds of lives on his conscience.
Yeah. It gave nice depth. That's one thing I've been very pleased with, how they're developing the characters. And I think one of the notes you made, Dante, for the show today about episode 6 is exactly how many different subplots they have going. But I think that's really important, because I think it is giving us insight into the characters in a way that I don't think we've seen, and we don't see generally in any kind of like drama.
Sure.
There's so many different things going on. Everybody's kind of got their own thing. And I really like that. It's giving the characters an amount of depth that they might not have otherwise had. So I think it's cool. It's going to be hard. I mean, it's a very intricate tapestry.
Very much.
To call back to my favorite Next Generation episode, Tapestry.
You remember Star Trek episode titles.
I know.
And you didn't think...
No,
you were a Trekkie.
Oh, I thought I was a Trekkie. I just didn't realize that it kind of outshone. But to be fair, when I went to see Star Wars in the theater for the first time, which was on the re-release of it, whenever the DVDs came out and they re-released with all the awful stuff that
1997.
Yeah, in 97. So in 97, when I went to see it in the theater for the first time, and I was walking out, and the person I had seen it with, I said, oh, I always love that scene where they're standing over Mos Eisley spaceport, and they're he's talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi says, a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. I'm like, I love that scene because the way it arches out, and I'm talking about it, and the person I was with was like, were there what? Where are they? What are you talking about?
I mean,
how do you know the name?
How do you know the name? Like, it's an iconic scene.
It is an iconic scene, but that was a certain level of fandom, I guess, of Star Wars that person didn't understand at that time. But so I do have that as well. But I think because I've seen Next Generation multiple times. I've seen the original series multiple times. I've never watched Voyager all the way through because I just can't stand Voyager. I haven't seen all of Deep Space Nine.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, I have fond memories in my heart of Voyager because it came out when I was like, God, maybe like between the ages of 11 and 13, when I didn't really have a filter or a barometer for what was good and what was bad.
Yeah.
Like all I remember is that there's the right way, the wrong way, and the Janeway.
Right.
I thought Janeway was great.
Right, and I really wanted to like Janeway, and I really still have a hard time with the fact. And I a lot of people have told me if you get further into it, I only think I stopped in season 2 somewhere, maybe season 3. I can't quite remember. A lot of people say as you continue to watch, Janeway grows on you and kind of the development of her character. But I just couldn't hang with some of the. I had difficulties with some of the science and some of the decisions they were making based on it. But let's not delve too far into Voyager when we still have episode 6 to talk about.
Yeah. So episode 6, Lethe.
Yes.
I don't know. I originally thought that it was called Lathe, Lathe.
Right.
Like a thing in a fabrication factory.
Yes.
But then I was like, oh no, Lethe. This is weird.
Yes.
Like, okay, like
look up the definition here. Being good.
I mean, like I knew a roller derby referee once named Lethe L Ejection, but
it's Greek mythology. Ancient was one of the rivers of the underworld of Hades.
Oh, interesting.
Also known as the Amelia's Potasmus River of Unmindfulness. The Lethe followed around the cave of Hypnos and through the underworld, where all those who drank from it experienced complete forgetfulness. Lethe was also the name of the Greek spirit of forgetfulness and oblivion, from who the river was often identified.
Interesting.
That is very interesting.
Let's see if we can go ahead and take a look at this episode in relation to its title then.
It literally means oblivion, forgetfulness, or concealment. I'm sticking with concealment as being one of the
stick with concealment then, yes. I like it. Way to go, Star Trek. You win.
Yeah, this one we'll go with. After the butcher and the lamb, I'm liking this one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So forgetfulness, oblivion, and concealment. Because let me tell you, our Lorca.
I mean,
man.
He's an interesting guy. He is most certainly an interesting guy.
Bad man. He's got some bad stuff he's going on in this episode. So we start out with him training Ash, right? Isn't that where it begins? With
him, we think that at least I thought that they were going through another Klingon vessel. I figured that this was like a raiding party or something.
That's what I thought.
And then I think about halfway through the sequence, I thought to myself, like, they're being too chummy for this. Like, this is probably a holodeck thing. And I was right. It's a holodeck thing.
Consistency. They didn't have holodecks in the original series.
Yeah. So I was pretty excited that we got kind of a local shout out. For those of you who don't know, the three of us are based in the Pacific Northwest, and Ash Tyler said that he's basically from Seattle. Basically from the Seattle area. And
That's
then
right.
And Lorca's like Asakwa High School, and looks like, what? And I'm like, I know where Asakwa is. Like, that's great. And more specifically, I know that it's now 29 kilometers outside of Seattle. I don't know how many miles that is, but I know that's 29 kilometers outside Seattle. It's like, yeah, I like to split hairs. You're not exactly like from Seattle,
right?
Which is like me. Like, I like to say that I'm from New Haven. I'm from Naugatuck, Connecticut, which is like 30 miles outside of New Haven. No, not 30, 17.
I do the same thing. I say I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. But sometimes I'll just say I'm from San Francisco if I just want to narrow it down. But I didn't really grow up in San Francisco, so it's like,
yeah, like like I grew up in and around New Haven, but like I never actually like lived there.
Yeah.
So if anybody out there ever sees me in real life and I tell you that I'm from New Haven, you have every right to go ahead and just call me out on that because I'm not actually from New Haven. Anyway, Pacific Northwest got a nice little shout out in that episode. I was happy.
Yes.
But it starts out with Lorca going through this training exercise, and then he basically immediately promotes Ash Tyler to his new chief of security. So I'm just like, well, that's kind of quick, don't you think? And then as soon as I'm thinking that, Lorca is just like, yeah, well, you spent 7 months on this bird of prey, you know how to fight, and you've been involved in this war effort basically more than anybody else on this vessel. If anybody knows the Klingons and knows how they think, and is prepared to go ahead and aid me in a war effort, it's you. And do you want this job or not? I was like, oh, well, I guess that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I agree that I think it's a little rushed. I'm a little suspect of Ash's character, just because it would be the perfect position.
Infiltration.
Yes.
Yeah.
It'd be the
That's
perfect
what I'm
way.
Suspicious of, but I'm like, I don't know if you can tell, like, getting him on the ship and then getting him out with someone tagging along and who he now trusts is like the perfect.
Well, then who puts in charge of security? Like,
exactly, like the
security
in charge of keeping people off.
Right, and keeping people safe. Like,
yeah,
you just got this guy. Like, I get the war bond. I get the war bond. Like, okay, that is not just something, that is really a thing. And I get his desire, and his rationalization is sound. Like, I understand all of that, but at the same time, I'm like, chief of security.
Well, that's where I'm like, this is a kind of arrogant of.
He's so arrogant.
He's like, I've done all my homework. I know everything about you.
Right.
Fine.
Yeah.
But like, you don't know everything.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something. That's something that Admiral Cornwell basically like confronts Lorca about as well, where she basically she comes up to him and is like, listen, listen to what Regina and Isabela just said. He's basically just gotten off of this Klingon bird of prey. He's been off of it for maybe 2 weeks after being a prisoner of war for 7 months, and he hasn't even been back to Starfleet headquarters to be debriefed at this point. Like, these are all points that she brings up to Lorca, and he's just like, nah, whatever. Let's go ahead.
But can you expect a guy who said oh, I'm totally fine, and probably lied his way through his debrief and everything to be back in command after being tortured?
Yeah. And
the other guy's been there for 7 months.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of what she brings up too, right? She brings up, he faked his way through whatever evaluations they put him in after his last appointment, and after having, essentially killed his entire crew. Yeah. So he faked his way through that. So we've got a certain level of sociopath.
Arrogance.
Sociopath. I mean, sociopath is certainly a good word for it. He's. I mean, this is some extreme PTSD that he is really not dealing with at this point. He needs frankly, he needs Deanna Troy, on this ship.
I thought that too. Okay, where's the counselor? Somebody needs to get the ship's counselor out here.
I'm gonna say, get some sort of Betazoid on the ship, get him to go ahead and get in touch with his feelings, make him cry for a week straight, and then maybe he'll be okay. But he's as we see throughout the episode, he is definitely not dealing with anything.
No, he's got so much denial going on. It's really, foundationally problematic for a captain in charge of not just a ship full of officers and people, but their most prized
their most prized ship
weapon right now.
You know, which is another thing that Cornwell brings up.
Yes.
like you are in charge of our #1 ship, and you are a walking mess of a human being.
That he's sleeping with a gun by his bed because we see them
copulating.
Yes, we see, which is something we didn't. Well, we saw Kirk a couple of times, but it's interesting to see that it was so early and it was so quick. And I wondered the first time she had been introduced if they had a romantic history because of just some of the play between them.
Yeah,
there's a little bit more here, I think.
Yeah, it looked like there was some sort of like unspoken attraction to them, or like maybe it was, or maybe like they had a fling or something like that when they were both in the academy or whatever.
Right.
Like, I get it.
Young, yeah.
And it looks like like they had still maintained this professional courtesy and respect for each other, and maybe had even evolved to the point where they became friends. But then he started being a creep about it, and talk about like unhealthy coping mechanisms. He starts deflecting pretty much every single one of her questions, and basically like brings out his colander, or whatever the heck you put brandy in. I don't know what the term is called. Colander is not the right word. Decanter.
Decanter, yes.
I got the part right.
Colander is what you put pasta in.
Yeah,
I realize that now.
Where did the hat? Did I miss that?
Yeah. So he brings out this decanter, just like, here, let's go
drink.
And we'll drink. Yeah, he doesn't bring out a colander and say, let's make pasta. That would be stupid. It's not at all romantic. But yeah, he basically goes ahead and starts like saying like, let's go ahead and we'll get drunk and we'll do stuff together. It'll be great.
Yeah.
And then and then it's just it's in post-coitus where she's just like like touching some of the scars on his back, and he basically like flips over and shoves a phaser down her throat and nearly kills her before he realizes who she is and that he just had this violent reaction.
Yeah.
And that's
she's rebel. And it's interesting. It was a nice reveal of that.
Mm-hmm.
To have it be in a moment of intimacy and quiet rather than have him have a meltdown in a battle, which I'm assuming will come as the story evolves. He's going to be triggered again and with the same sort of intensity. But I was really pleased that first moment, our first glimpse into the depth of his trauma, came in a quiet moment because it really gave it a lot of depth.
Yeah, I mean, like, and he even apologizes. He's like, "Yeah, like I'm not used to having anybody else in my bed. Like, this is this is weird for me." And she's just freaking out and like, why are you still sleeping with a phaser underneath your pillow?
Right.
Like, you are in a safe spot where no one is coming to get you.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's interesting. So essentially, what she says to him at that point is, "I'm going to recommend that you be removed from your position, and you have to give up your ship."
Yeah, you're gonna have to give up your ship, and she even makes him this soft promise that like maybe after some psych evaluations have come back, like maybe we can go ahead and get you back on, if not this ship, some ship.
Right.
But obviously, like it's not good enough for him, and we see this classic like little kid being scolded approach where Sanu comes up to him at the end of the episode and it's like, what should we do? And he recommends this very straight and narrow, following every single rule recommendation for it. To the point where like even Sanu is just like, are you sure? Are you sure this is something you want to do? We've usually kind of just like, just gone out there and not dealt with Starfleet before. Yeah,
when someone he cares about, I mean, it's clear that they have a depth of relationship. So, had it been Michael or had it been Ash, there would have been no question about going on a rescue mission, regardless of what. So he uses that to his advantage because what she didn't tell anybody. So at this point, she hasn't told anybody because part of what she says to him is, I will give you time to make it right with your crew so you can, not be, just pulled out. But, when I come back from this mission, which I don't know about everybody else. But I was like, what? The Klingons want to meet with who?
Yeah.
Off on some island by themselves?
Mm-hmm.
This already smelled from the beginning. And he's like, oh, yeah, just go, Admiral. We'll send you in your place. Well, and he suggests her to go in Sarek's place.
Yeah.
Oh, the Depth's not a nice guy. And then he's like, no, we're not going to do a rescue because even though it's totally in my character to just go after the people that I love, I'm not going to do that this time. I'm going to be responsible.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like he wants
really
to
trying not to get removed.
Yeah, at this point, like
I'm
sorry, Isabela.
He just doesn't want to get removed. I mean, it works for him if he doesn't go rescue her right away.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like that's what I'm saying. He's acting like a little child who just got scolded. And he's really trying to be on the straight and narrow because he doesn't want to give up. He doesn't want to give up his post. Like it's not that. Like yeah, I mean it's not that he. Oh goodness. I lost the sense. Like he's basically doing this out of fear at this point. He wants to go ahead and try to make up for past transgressions with his current like, hey, look at me, like I'm following the rules now. Like,
I didn't read it that way.
Can he like? I don't know.
I read it much darker, which probably says a lot more about me than anything else. But I think he knew to a degree once he found out that it was the Klingons wanted to meet with a high-ranking official off the grid. I think he, in his instinct, knew it was a trap. I think he suggested her knowing that she would be an even, greater asset for them. And I think he stepped back from going on a rescue mission, not to behave properly, but because he's hoping that she dies. Because his problem will go away if she dies because she didn't report it to anybody.
She's the only one who knows at this point.
So I think it was all very calculated.
All right. So I don't view Lorca as that downright evil because that is a
that's why I was like, he's a bad man. Like I think he's really just jumped off the end with this, but I mean I could be wrong.
I think that he is like I feel like even if he did calculate that this thing was going to happen, I feel like his motive would be, I want to get the go ahead from Starfleet to helm a rescue mission for her.
Right.
So that way, when I rescue her and she has to go to
she'll have to
admirals, then she can say, he's a great guy. He just saved my life.
Right. What do you think, Isabela?
I think I'm kind of in between the two of you.
That's perfect.
I think I don't think he like outright thought like manufactured that to like from the beginning, but I think once he realized what happened, that he was like just using it to his advantage.
Yeah.
And to make himself seem good,
like he's behaving.
Yeah, like I said, I don't believe that he intentionally set this up. Like I think he's just trying to.
Well, I mean,
I think he's just trying to walk the straight and narrow now, so that he doesn't get written up and lose his ship because I mean, like, he said it during the episode during their argument. It's like, don't take my ship. This is all I have. Like he is trying desperately to cling on to his captain ship.
You said
he's desperately trying to grasp onto this starship because it is the only thing at this point that is giving him any purpose. And I think that any actions that he is taking right now are in a last ditch desperate effort to maintain his captain's chair because he does not want to be demoted. He doesn't want to go back to Starfleet command. He basically doesn't want to be forcibly retired and put into a desk job.
Right.
So he wants to be on the front lines, which I mean, as I understand it, it is another one of many manifestations of PTSD, where where folks who have experienced heavy time in war don't feel good reintegrating back into normal society. They want to be back on the front lines because they feel like that's the only place for them.
They understand it. Well, they understand the risk and the problems and all of that. It's all it's what their worlds become, and so it's that coping becomes life instead of something that's a short period of time where you do it, it becomes all they really understand. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I guess I just took a really dark view. I don't know. Like, he might not have known for sure that it was a trap, but
he probably didn't feel good about it. I mean, that's a really dumb thing to do.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it was just, there was so much wrong with it. Even from Sarek being the one going out for it, to be the one to meet with them. I think that he had a bad feeling about it, and he set her up for it, saying, well, she'd be the perfect person to go do this, because he knew that it was a high risk situation.
Oh, now you're bringing Star Wars into us. I got a bad feeling about this.
Bad feeling about this.
So yeah, I mean, so dear listeners, I think you know now which one of us in this website is the cynic. That one. But anyways, like, so obviously like episode 6, Lorca's PTSD and his continued story arc is, I think it was obviously the like the highlight of this episode for all three of us, but it wasn't exactly the main plot.
Right.
The main plot line. The episode opens with something that made me literally laugh out loud, was Vulcan logic extremists. Sorry, I can't even say it without laughing, because that just sounds so ridiculous. But it is, it is quite, I mean, in classic Star Trek fashion, it is quite relevant as a commentary to real life and what we're going through, where we've got this radical extremist portion of the Vulcan population who believe that the experiment with intermingling with humans and with trying to be a partner in Starfleet is over, and they should just be isolationists. They should pull out, and they should basically just be for themselves, because it is the logical thing to do. Did you two have any thoughts on this ideology, and like, are they going for social commentary here, or like, are they just trying to go ahead and get Sarek into a bad situation for purposes of driving this episode's plot?
I'm sure they were, to a degree. I also do think there's a fair amount of social commentary going on in that storyline, and in you can't separate this from the time it was written and the time it's airing, which is like with The Handmaid's Tale coming out when it did. Even if it didn't originally sort of come, it wasn't produced before kind of this era began, but it still has the same impact, and it still has to be put in this place of when it's airing. And I think there is a fair amount of social kind of commentary going on in that. I think it's interesting to take the Vulcans, who we see as this kind of superior logic, lacking conflict society, which doesn't reflect us or pretty much any societies, to any kind of extreme, and to infiltrate this kind of like logic can be taken too far, and the emotion that kind of comes from that, because that guy who like literally sacrificed himself in order to crash Sarek's ship had to be operating from an emotional base. You don't make a decision like that without having some emotional foundation for it.
Right. That's why I was like, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, I think
it's like,
yeah, go ahead.
Like it's inherently not a logical place.
I know. And that's what I think it's, yeah, the commentary I think is like, you go so far to the extreme of logic that you loop back to emotion.
Right.
Like they've gone so far, they've removed so far that they've actually like put themselves back in the place of making emotionally based decisions.
Yeah.
Which also, ties to the Sarek and Burnham plot as well, where she's trying to help save him. They have this special connection because he saved her life, and so she can get into his mind as he's been unconscious on the ship. And so she goes through this whole journey of going back to this moment in time that he keeps reliving right before he's going to die. And she thinks he's reliving her greatest failure, but comes to find out he's really reliving his own, which was also a decision, I would argue, because he decides, he's given the choice by the Vulcan high-ups that he could have Spock or Michael go to the academy, the Vulcan Academy. And he chooses not to send her and to send Spock, which I think is an emotional decision as well. It's not a decision based in logic necessarily. It's an emotion. That's an emotion based. He wanted his son to be the one to be able to go. Irony, of course, Spock chooses not to, which we all know by this time when this whole interaction is going on. So he sacrifices her, which would have meant so much to her as to have been part and parcel and included.
Yeah.
And he's reliving this failure.
Yeah. I think this kind of ties into the whole classic thing with televised dramas, is that people would just be better off if they talked to each other.
Oh,
about
we would have
things.
no stories at all if people like actually spoke to each other. But
Yeah. I mean, it's a thing. That's right.
Like he could have just gone back to her and said, they made me make this decision, not lied to her. And it's not logical to lie.
No,
it's not logical to lie ever.
It is never logical. Well, yeah, it's usually never logical to lie. I mean, in some sci-fi stories, they can go ahead and make those moral dilemmas where it's just like, if I had told you these things, somebody would have died, so I had to keep it to myself. We see that all the time. So yes, in real life, it is never logical to lie. In sci-fi world,
in storytelling,
in storytelling,
it's necessary.
Sometimes those things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I mean, it shows that it shows that he is or that that Sarek has developed that kind of sympathy, and for me, it's it explores and kind of answers a question that I've always had about Vulcans for quite some time. I was under the impression that Vulcans were physically, biologically unable to process emotion. Like they didn't have like an amygdala or something like that in their brain. I think
Uh-oh.
Oh no, he froze for you too.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Oh no.
No.
Dante, if you can hear us, hang up, come back.
Yeah. We can't hear you anymore, Dante.
Well, going off of what he was saying, is that I think that I think I was under that impression too, and that's why Spock was so
tortured.
Special. Yeah, and special in his own way, because he was the joining of, the incredibly emotional humans and the very logical Vulcans.
Right. And that's the reason why it was so hard for him, was because it was actually, I don't think I'd ever heard that it was a physical thing as much as I understood it to be
like an ideology.
Yeah, that the society and the social commentary of it was the
Hello?
Hi.
Oh God, I'm so sorry, everybody. I'm so embarrassed because my computer just decided to reboot itself. That's what you get, folks, when you ignore the Windows updates.
Yes, you can't ignore them forever. They do force you into them. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. So Izzy was saying that she had the same understanding that it was a physical thing. I didn't know that. I don't remember having heard that it was actually a physical lacking, but that it was more societal. And my evidence for this is going to be Ponfar.
Okay.
You know, Ponfar is
right.
Nope, sure don't.
It's like they're mating heat thing. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah.
Like they go into like extreme emotional mating phase.
Yes.
Right.
Where which will actually kill them if they don't
go through with it
within an accurate amount of time. And in the original series, I was really hoping I could remember the title of that episode, but I don't. There is an episode where Spock is like visibly emotionally distressed and is like breaking down, and then it comes to light that he's been trying to hide it. Again, illogical. He's trying to hide that he has this physical response and that he has the Ponfar and he needs to go like to Vulcan, and he's been promised by his parents to marry some chick, and he needs to go take care of that in order to rid himself of the physical manifestation of his sex drive.
Interesting. Okay, so I clearly am less of a Trekkie than that.
I think we can pretty much throw the gauntlet down and say that I'm the Trekkie.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Not only the purist, but definitely have to have seen the, to know the lore, at least of the original series, to a greater.
I don't even know where I remember that from. I think it was from Enterprise, actually.
Yes, it actually happens to the Vulcan on Enterprise as well. And we had an episode where we talked in depth about Enterprise, and that was a real sticking point for a couple of people in that conversation about how they had treated her sexuality. I can't remember her name off the top of my head.
T'Pol.
Because she's triggered by some outside force. It isn't like the time, but she gets triggered, but it's like in this extreme sort of sexual thing. And I don't know if that's still emotion as much as sort of that primal, but they still have whatever primal brain drives them to procreate.
That's what a race that is logic-based would, and pretty sexless, I guess, would develop to, continue the species.
Right. They'd have to have something like that. Yeah. So, it was a really cool sort of way to integrate some of Michael's background through the mind meld and through seeing it through Sarek's eyes as her father figure. I thought that was helpful that she was able to find him and rescue and help him, jar him awake enough to get him to hit the button.
Press the button.
Yeah. And the beacon so they could find him and rescue him.
Yeah. It was fine. Obviously, I think everybody who's watching knows what I thought was the more compelling
I agree.
Compelling plot point. This just seemed like, I don't know, when they go into unnecessary retcons where Spock had this basically had this secret sister the whole time that nobody knew about until now. I'm like, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know, that just gets messy. I didn't need I'm sure it's different for a purist like you, but for the uninitiated lay people who just kind of casually enjoy Star Trek like I do, I didn't need the whole Sarek intertwining thing. I don't honestly, if I never see Kirk or Scotty or Spock or Chekhov or Uhura or anybody from the original series, it'll be perfectly fine. There's an entire universe out there. There's an entire universe out there, and sure, you can go ahead and have Michael Burnham be Vulcan, but why did it have to be Sarek? Did it have to be Sarek? Could it have been literally
any other
else? Because as far as I know, there's basically one Vulcan family, and that's Sarek's family.
And his wife is human.
and his wife is human.
I agree. It's sort of forcing connections that we wouldn't necessarily need to force, and it might have been more interesting too had it not been Sarek and it had been another Vulcan ambassador who had taken in a human child. And then we could have seen the connection to Sarek, but it wouldn't have had to have been him driving the
exactly.
Yeah.
So the entire story for that reason kind of fell flat for me. But I'm not like it wasn't like it was poorly executed. I think it was just like I was not fully engrossed in the whole intermingling with the one Vulcan family that we know exists from the original series and from the original movies and from the rebooted movies. I'm like, show me something different.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like, what do you feel from the purist standpoint? Like, are we happy that Sarek is here? Are we happy that it's tying into the original series lore, or at least trying to retcon itself into the original series lore?
I don't know. Like, I think I would be happier if it was someone else, because I'm constantly thinking about Sarek's place in the original series and in Next Generation. And how complicated that makes this storyline. I'm always kind of happy to see calls back to, like, I'm glad to see Mudd in this because I think he was just such a great character in the original series. And I'm curious to see where it goes with him because I know he's going to be in more episodes. And so they had a lot of characters they could have pulled on, not necessarily Vulcans, but a lot of characters from the original series that they wanted to pull them in that they could have. Other captains. There was one, I can't remember, the Doomsday Machine is an episode from the original series where it was literally like a space entity that was eating starships. And the captain that they find who has had his starship eaten has just been absolutely destroyed. He would have been a perfect candidate to bring into this series because he is only in one episode. He dies in that episode. You know, he would have been great. They could have, shown him interacting with Lorca and how, it just would have been really good. There were a lot of other places they could have gone to tie to the original lore without going for the most well-known Vulcan.
The second most well-known Vulcan.
The second most well-known Vulcan next to Spock, but still connected to Spock. So, they could have. They had a lot of room to do it, and I understand the desire to tie it to the outstanding characters because that gives it the cred, maybe. But I don't think it needed it. I think if they would have done the writing, would have focused on the writing well enough, it wouldn't have needed that. Okay. I just want to make really quick comment about Tilly's character in this episode.
Yes.
Because she starts training with Michael to, strengthen her, application to try to move up the ranks.
Absolutely. I thought it was exactly what this character needed. She came off very strong in the first couple of episodes, and I was initially just like, oh god, like too much. But now I think that I feel like she is finally over the whole awkward, like, can you be my friend? Please be my friend now. She's over that bit, and now I think we're actually getting to see who Tilly actually is, and there's a little bit more depth to her personality other than the comedically crippling socially awkwardness that we've seen.
I agree.
So we see she is actually she has drive, she has plans, she's capable of having some sort of complex situations because she's the one who goes ahead and kicks Michael under the table to go ahead and just be like, a cute boy is looking at you, shake his hand. So she's not all that. She's not all made of socially awkward. She understands how to pick up at least some social cues. It gave her depth.
And I love at the end, so Michael is like pushing her to run faster and to get into better physical shape. following essentially Michael's own trajectory to becoming first officer.
No, exactly, yeah,
right.
because and she tried to convince Tilly that, like, listen, your personality is going to mean nothing because everybody who applies to be captain is going to be smart. You need to be able to go ahead and distinguish yourself in some other way, and that was really cool.
Yeah, well, and then I love that at the end where Michael finds her running again, and she says, "Don't follow my path, forge your own." And she's like, "I plan to." And I was just like, "Yeah, you go, girl."
and I really like that she has genuinely adopted the fact that Michael is her mentor figure. I think that it says a lot about her personality. That she appears to be one of very few Starfleet officers who is able to overlook the big, scarlet letter that Michael is carrying. She basically should have a scarlet M sitting around her neck, at this point, because they basically bring up mutineer in every single episode.
It's dropped at least once. That's why.
It's dropped at least once, and Tilly at this point doesn't seem to care. She I think just by virtue of being forced to live with her and being forced into close quarters, she realized there's a lot more to Michael than just the mutiny part of it, and I get the impression that Michael is usually not very forthcoming about these kinds of things. I get the impression that they haven't had very many heart-to-heart conversations about her past or anything like that. I'm sure that it has been one-sided, that Tilly has just poured out everything about her past, and Michael's just sitting there okay. That's great.
Yeah. Well, and she was also the one who helped her open the last will and testament from Giorgio, which was really important. And so she's been there in very significant ways without having been too terribly overbearing, which she could have been. They could have made her character very overbearing in that. Even with the enthusiasm she had to be her friend and to kind of connect with her. So they really have done well. They've done a good treatment of her.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like I said, they stumbled a little bit. At least I felt they stumbled a little bit, but she's finally hit her stride. No pun intended, because she's running this entire episode. I swear, I do this so often that now I don't even mean to do it, and I still do it.
Yeah, that's all right. I like fun. We can fun.
But yeah, I really enjoy where Tilly is going, and honestly, I would love to see if at the end of the season, Tilly gets to be captain of her own vessel, and chooses Michael as a first officer. I would be like, way to go, Star Trek.
Well, we already know. That leads me to the point I was going to close on, is we already know there's going to be a second season.
Yeah, we already know there's going to be a second season.
Already announced a second season.
Yeah, and they've set up for Michael to go ahead and continue to be part of the show by basically giving her. They gave her another position. They gave her another position.
So she's got an official role on the ship now, which is
weird. I'm not how do you two feel about it? Because I am very conflicted about this. I don't understand. Go ahead.
Understand how they could actually even recruit her into an official set. Getting a prisoner on board who helped you a step. Sure.
Well, I think he's made
giving her an official position kind of seems.
Yeah, he's made reference to some provision that says in time of war you can make
strange bedfellows.
You can make out of norm decisions for personnel.
Yeah,
he says that to the admiral in their conversations when she's like, "Oh,
which kind of makes me think about what's her role after the war."
Well, and that'll be the question. Will he be able to stand on that? And that's an interesting thing for the series, is how long is it going to be in wartime? And I'm assuming it's pretty much that's the crux of the entire show. So I'm assuming they're going to be at war for the entire show. It might resolve at the end, and then you'll have some sort of, warm and fuzzy happy ending.
Do we know how long the war lasted?
I don't remember.
No, I mean, all we know is that this is basically 10 years before the original series.
Yeah.
We don't know how long this war is going to last.
And they're not in good terms in the original series with the Klingons, even though they're not actively at war. They've just come to an agreement where they have the neutral zone that nobody goes into.
Okay.
And they're still, not on good terms. This war does not resolve the issues. It does not bring Worf onto the bridge. That happens after the original series. So,
okay. So, all right. So what I guess what I'm hearing then is that this war lasts somewhere in the neighborhood of now to 10 years.
Right. Yeah.
Like some number less than 10 years because by the start of the original series, we have to have the neutral zone.
Right. Yeah. We have to have the neutral zone established, and but there's enough, it's been recent enough so that the feelings about the Klingons still ride very high in terms of them being the word that's coming to mind is animalistic, which is not the word I'm thinking of. Barbaric. Yes, that's yes. Barbaric, violent, the complete opposite of the Vulcans because they rely entirely on emotion. So yeah, those feelings are still pretty fresh at the start of and throughout the original series, where they, the Trouble at Tribbles episode features the Klingons predominantly because somebody's passing as not being Klingon, but who is, which would be impossible in this timeline.
Yeah, of course.
So, unless you had some sort of major reconstruction. Did I read that? Did you say that, Dante, that you think the Torchbringer is Ash? Or did I read that somewhere?
No, you read that somewhere.
Okay.
That is most certainly a thought that never crossed my mind.
Oh, yeah. Somebody somewhere, and it was probably, I shared a couple of articles with you guys about it. And in one of those articles, I think somebody had supposed that the torchbearer says something about the woman who saves him says something about you need to go to extreme lengths for this. And so somebody had posited that he had some sort of surgery to make himself look human, got himself placed on that ship, and then they let them escape, which I think is a little far-fetched, but
that sounds really far-fetched.
Yeah. So
I mean, like if the Klingons all looked like they did in the original series, sure. Because that was before they started going ham with all the prosthetics.
Yeah. They didn't have any. I mean, they had a little,
like thing or something like that.
Yeah, they had lines and some prosthetics here, but they were not very pronounced, and that's pretty much all they had. And their eyebrows went up, and they all had facial hair.
Yeah, they all had their skinny little goatees and stuff like that.
Yeah, and they were slightly darker skinned.
Yeah, it wasn't until Next Generation where you started seeing Klingons with the very pronounced ridges on their head, and which has ultimately evolved into now where they're basically sentient lobsters with legs.
They do look very crustacean-y.
Yeah, it's just I have a hard time believing that that these beings actually have a spine. Like I'm convinced that they're all basically just exoskeleton. But that's just me.
All right. I think we've hit at least all the main points that I can think of that we had.
I think so.
For this, yeah, we covered episodes 5 and 6 pretty good. So it's Saturday as we're recording this live. So the next episode 7. Oh wait, I saw the title of it here somewhere. Oh, that's another long one. Episode 7: Magic to make the sanest man go mad.
Magic can make the sanest man go mad.
Yes.
Is this a Cthulhu episode?
It's about the science. Oh gosh,
Stamets. It might be. He's pictured in the thumbnail for the episode, and it says, as the USS Discovery crew attempts to let loose at a party, An unwelcome visitor comes aboard, bringing about a problematic and twisted sequence of events.
Interesting.
Could be Mud. Maybe Mud got out.
Oh, I think.
You know what? I think I saw that in the previews. Yeah, now that I think about it, it is Mud.
I think I remember hearing.
Yeah, it was at the end of the preview where they were just like, "Hey, I'm back," and I'm just like, "Oh God, how did you get out?"
I think it's going to be Mud, but yeah, Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad is episode 7. So we'll be back in 2 weeks talking about episodes 7 and 8, and we would love to hear your feedback. Please go visit us at thegeekembassy.com and let us know what you're thinking, or catch us on Twitter at The Geek Embassy. You can catch me on Twitter at DocLiz, and Dante and Isabella, give your handles as well in case anybody wants to chat with you.
I am at Dante Informal. It's slang rhyme, folks.
I'm on Twitter at Rizzo.
Yeah, so catch up with us. Send us your thoughts. Is Lorca a sociopath? Is he as evil as I think he is? Is he not quite as evil as Dante thinks he is? Or is he somewhere in the middle, as Isabela is taking? And until next time, get your geek on and go disco.
No.
Never disco.
Bye.